So what you're saying is with 7K, I can take my fiat dollars and I can convert that to gold or silver, and I can connect my gold and silver balance to a debit card and spend against my gold and silver, correct?
They have said that that's going to be coming. It's not currently available as of the time that we're doing this. But yes, they've said that is coming. Now, right now, they have a mechanism where you can denominate the holdings that you have in 7K into gold and silver. But there's going to be that haircut that I talk about. And so I'm not a fan of that. And the truth is it's a big step. I mean, unless silver suddenly spikes in the near future, you got to wait. You got to wait a while. And some people who did that, let's say people converted their cash balance into silver, earlier this year when silver was up closer to almost $30 an ounce. Well, today those people are doubly down because silver's dropped down substantially and it's only worth about $22, $23 an ounce. So, they if you're having to offset the haircut that happens with physical bullion, it can be a real challenge, which is why, again, I've started to gravitate towards these collectible coins, because you can get your money back pretty quickly if you need
Okay. So what's your idea of a perfect financial system?
to. That's probably above my pay grade. A perfect financial system. I mean, on what scale? It's too big of a question, I think.
I guess something that benefits waitresses, waiters, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, Grubhub drivers, just the everyday American.
Well, you're probably not going to like my answer. My answer is there's nothing wrong with this system. The problem is not fiat. And I know people are going to hate me for that. Let me just state this up front. I am a fan of sound money. I am a fan of gold and silver. I am libertarian in my core, every way you twist it. I also, because of my study of economics, because I've seen how things have played out over the many years, I recognize that a gold-backed system where there is no fiat also has limitations. So there's good to a gold-backed system, and there's also weaknesses to the gold-backed system. People didn't just create a fiat system out of nowhere just to screw everybody. There's a reason that governments have used fiat systems over the years. And the big reason is because it creates monetary elasticity. It allows the money supply to expand and contract. Whereas a species-based system, which would be a gold-based system, there's limitations to that. So let's just put this into the server's world. You've got a server who's serving tables, and maybe they're bringing home $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month, and suddenly their car breaks down. They need to go get their car fixed. And so what do? They go to the mechanic, and the mechanic says it's going to be $1,000. And the server says, I don't have $1,000. And the mechanic says, do you have a credit card? And they say, yeah. So they swipe their credit card. And in that moment, their money supply just expanded by $1,000. Well, you multiply that over all the people around the country and around the world, and everybody who's swiping credit cards and using credit for their immediate needs, they are expanding the money supply. When you have a goal-based system, there's not as much opportunity for that money supply to expand and contract. And so that's why a fiat system actually does have benefit, and I can make the argument for a fiat system. In the same way, the fiat system can get out of control, which is what we're seeing right now. And then people kind of swing the pendulum back the other way, and we end up going back to a goal-based system. But then you get into a goal-based system, and there's limitations to that. And now you need to have that extra swipe of the credit card. You need to have that extra money supply, and it doesn't exist. And so that's where you got into all this crazy stuff with the banks doing fractional reserve lending and all these things that, expanded the money supply. And then there was runs on the bank. Well, because you can't print your way out of the problem, everybody's demanding their gold, and you end up with a bank run. So bank runs were the reason that central banking became the preference. And then the fact that the central bank couldn't keep enough money, couldn't keep enough gold, was the reason that FDR devalued the dollar, because they needed to expand the money supply. And then, that we were running out of money supply again, which is why Nixon took us off of the gold standard and put us onto a fiat currency. If you look at the history, it's about every 50 years. So it's about 50 years ago that we went off of the gold-based system. It's about 50 years before that FDR did what he did. It was about 50 years before that we had a new system that came in after the Civil War. It was roughly 50 to 80 years before that President Jackson, I guess it was Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson put us back onto a gold standard, and it was a few years before that, roughly 30 to 50 years before that they had taken us and put us onto a fiat system. So there's a pattern to this, because it's about 50 years roughly that a system can run before something has to be reset. And I think that's also an interesting point to make too, because in biblical times, we had the debt jubilees, and that was about a 50-year cycle where you would run, and after 50 years, they just wiped it all out and reset the system. So I think there's a principle here that we just kind of start to understand, that in economics, about every 50 years, you have to reset the system. And going one way or the other is just an extreme reaction to what the last 50 years experience was. Does that make sense?
But
Yeah.
yes, it does. It does.
I'm not sure if I answered your question the way I should have for servers, but I hope I did, because you asked the question, what would be a better system for a server? Well, the system you're in, just learn to play the game you're playing. If you're playing Monopoly, play the game of Monopoly. If you're playing the game of life, play the game of life. If you're playing any other money game, you learn to play that game. And if the game is fiat, you play that game. If the game is gold backed, you play that game. The problem across the board, whether you're in a gold-based system or a fiat-based system, is not inherently whether it's gold backed or whether it's fiat. The problem across the board is the corruption. That's what has to be rooted out. And, that's what really has to be taken care of.
Okay, so what exactly is blockchain technology?
Blockchain technology, I'll just explain this as simply as I know how, it's a decentralized ledger system, basically. So a centralized ledger would be, first of all, just to define terms in case people aren't familiar with the term ledger, it's basically what runs at the bank. So you make a deposit, you make a withdrawal, that's a ledger system, and keeps a track of that. The bank is the central authority on that. With a decentralized ledger system, what you're doing is you have an entity that is a non-human entity that is keeping the ledger. And in the case of Bitcoin, for example, you have 3 points of confirmation. So you have 3 different computers that will do the calculation to say, Mr. Rumsey subtracted this much money from this, and here's his remaining balance, and it was transferred over to Mr. Whaley, and Mr. Whaley received it here. And then 2 other computers will do the same calculation. They compare them to each other, and when they compare them, they have confirmation, they seal it, and it is locked into the blockchain forever. That is all done without a human interaction. And that process is actually where the Bitcoin mining comes from. That's when you do that calculation, that is the mining process. What the blockchain is it's just the digital block of where the data lives. And so you start stacking up the different nodes, and that creates one piece, and you have a part of it that becomes part of the ledger, and then it gets all locked up into a block, and it gets chained together. And like, it's all just kind of different terminology that describes the process that I described to you. So does that make sense? Is that simple enough for you?
Kind of, yeah. But I want to know, does blockchain destroy financial privacy?
I don't, based on what I understand, I would say no, but maybe there's, in which way? I need more clarity on that question.
So let's say you decide to use your debit card and you go to Kmart, Walmart, whatever, and you're buying clothes. Well, is Uncle Sam going to know what you're buying?
Probably.
Okay.
My
So
Uncle Sam already knows what I'm buying.
okay. So what you're saying is that there's a chance that blockchain does destroy financial privacy.
I don't think it destroys it any worse than maybe it's already been destroyed. I think it adds to potential privacy because the blockchain itself doesn't necessarily say this is Mr. Rumsey. It doesn't say this is Mr. Whaley in Nashville, Tennessee. It just has a wallet address. And the wallet address itself can be pretty anonymous. And you can move money between wallets. So I think there's more opportunity for privacy with blockchain. If we had a really an actual blockchain expert, they could explain more of the details of how that would work. But I would have to fall on the side of there's a lot more opportunity with blockchain for the privacy.